My name is Caitlin Clark, and I teach a class where we use a video game to learn about horticultural plants. The game is called Breath of the Wild, and it's the most recent game in the Legend of Zelda franchise. As with all Zelda games, you play as Link, so I might refer to the player or Link interchangeably. The game came out in 2017, and it's what is called an open world game. The player can go anywhere on the map at any point. There's a very loose script, and the game mechanics emphasize exploration. There's nowhere on the map that is off limits at any point. The plants found in different regions are reflective of the climate and geography, as well as cultural and historical context. Importantly, the player has to interact with these plants by gathering them and cooking them in order to restore health, which is the red hearts up in the left-hand corner, endurance, and also grant effects that help them deal with different environmental conditions. So, what are the geographical and historical conditions that govern the location and uses of these plants? Well, first of all, in the world of the game, there was a cataclysmic event 100 years before the present, which drastically reduced the population of the continent. So it's common to find ruins and other evidence of prior civilization. The game map follows basic principles of physical geography. The eastern half of the continent is near the ocean, and it shows signs of having a more humid climate. The northern areas are colder, and as you move south, you start seeing more tropical vegetation. The western half of the continent is drier, again evidenced by vegetation and weather. And here we find steppes, deserts, foothills, and mountainous regions. So where do we start our exploration of the plants in this game? I think the most logical place to begin is with apples. Apples are found primarily in the more humid areas, and that reflects their actual preferred conditions. They aren't found in areas where the climate would be too warm or too dry. They're also associated with populated areas. They line streets and grow outside of houses. And in the humid regions, they can be found growing in wilder places, which makes some sense given the historical context of the world, that some of them might have escaped cultivation. But these wild apple trees are less likely to be observed in the drier western half of the continent. Here, the only apple trees we find are associated with previously settled areas. Apples also have a cultural significance. They are a common offering to tree spirits found throughout the game, and sometimes the player has to solve puzzles involving apple trees to awaken these tree spirits. But the primary use of the apple is as a food source. It's one of the first foods you encounter at the beginning of the game, and its bright red color signals to the player that this is an item you can collect and interact with. And as with most items in this game, its uses are versatile, and it can also be used to make friends with dogs and horses. Apples aren't the only plant you'll find and use in this game. The plant-based materials are extensive. Most of the plants have special properties that grant the player abilities relevant to the gameplay, such as moving faster or moving silently. There are over 20 plant materials you can collect, not including fungi. Most of them are found in climatically appropriate areas and invite further discussion about a variety of topics, from basic biological concepts like evolution and population genetics that can lead into discussions of different types of breeding approaches and other topics relevant to horticultural students. So a quick overview so you can get an idea of the diversity. We have radishes. They have analeptic compounds, which makes them a hardy item. Another hardy item is the durian, found exclusively in the tropical area in the southeastern part of the map. In this region, we also find bananas. And if you go down to the beach off of the highlands, you'll find palm fruit. There are pumpkins in the game. They're only cultivated. You have to buy them. You can't find them in the wild. But you can find watermelons growing in the desert region, along with dragon fruit cacti and palm fruit, which also grow in the desert. You have opportunities to talk about things like trait selection, domestication, and in the case of the dragon fruit, making assumptions, for example, that all cacti prefer dry conditions. In the desert region, we also have a side quest where we help a child grow a garden of berries. You bring her berries from the highlands, the cold regions, and she extracts the seeds and grows the berry plants in a garden. One of the few plants growing in the cold regions is also the pepper, which is my favorite example of a trade-off between realism and gameplay. Despite being a frost-tender plant, in the game, spicy peppers are often found in cold regions, and that's because they serve an important function of keeping Link warm. Like I mentioned before, the cooking mechanics are used to give Link certain abilities, including environmental tolerances. So, spicy peppers are found in these cold regions. In case Link gets caught in a place like that without anything else to protect him from the cold, he can collect the peppers and cook them to get the warming effect, and when he eats the dish, he has some protection from the elements. These are just a few examples of commonly found plants, but there's lots more. There's 2 different kinds of carrots. There's lotus seeds only in the wetland areas. We also can find truffles. They can only be collected from forested areas. They're found always associated with the base of a tree trunk. And then there's also plants with medicinal properties, a great variety of them. One of them is this plant based off of pineapple weed, which is a chamomile relative. And we also have other medicinal plants like this thistle, which is found in many different regions throughout the map. There's also this plant that resembles a globe artichoke, and it has its own medicinal properties. We can also harvest greens in the wild. In the humid region to the east, if you cut grass, you can get rice, but here in the drier western part of the map, you can cut grass and get wheat. The wheat is used in the cooking mechanics as flour. So this, if you look at the recipe for this crepe, it is cane sugar and wheat, and then this is another little cake. If you look at the recipe for that, again, it includes the wheat. And plants can also be used to dye clothes. So in addition to the medical and health promoting properties, you can choose plants with different colors and dye your clothes and customize your outfit if you want. So these are just the horticultural plants that you can gather, but I think the plants in general contribute to the depth and the character of the game world. So, for example, in this desert region, there are lots of cultivated palms, and it gives a sense of being in the place. Here in this cold maritime climate, the trees, if you get up close and look at the leaves, they're clearly maple trees, and you get a sense of being in a cold, wet, humid place. And the level of interaction is high. So the different characters in the different villages, like this woman, she raises these plums, and they're really important to who she is and where she lives. So the player has to know what plants are useful for which situations, and has to be able to remember where to find them and how to use them. The plant locations are consistent in their logic, and their properties are by and large drawn from real-world plants. Because the plant life is woven so tightly into the tapestry of the game world, there are many points that can be further explored, and lots of different topics that can be covered. All the different elements of horticulture introduced by the game mean that this is flexible enough. You can adjust the instruction to cater to students who have lots of horticultural knowledge, who are interested in integrating it into a creative work, but you can also engage students who are in creative disciplines who are interested in learning about the science of plants. Ultimately, the final project in the proposed course is designed to blend science and creativity. By evaluating or creating horticultural plants in a fictional world, the students must examine the scientific implications of climate and geography and anthropogenic effects on plants, as well as the creative aspects of what fits into the fictional world, what is interesting to the reader or the player or the viewer, and what makes sense for the fictional society or culture that they've created. The course will include videos like these to explore various aspects of different plants within the game world, as well as opportunities for students to play the game themselves if they haven't already. The Legend of Zelda games have been around since 1986, and they've won numerous awards over the years, so I think this course should have a broad appeal to many different kinds of students. I hope you enjoyed this brief look at the plants contained within Breath of the Wild, and that it gives some idea of the potential for using this game as a tool for instruction.